Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at the absolutely unparalleled evolution of San Francisco. I mean, think about it. We're talking about a booming metropolis of 800,000 residents, boasting a tech-driven economy worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It's got this globally recognized skyline defined by that striking Transamerica Pyramid and, of course, the iconic orange glow of the Golden Gate Bridge. It is truly a city unlike any other on the planet, a place where the future just seems to be written daily.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer mind-blowing contrast. When you think about the high-tech campuses, the towering skyscrapers, and the bustling piers we know today, you kind of assume it's always been a major hub, right? But almost everything we associate with San Francisco simply didn't exist even 180 years ago. No way. Back then, it wasn't a city at all. It was mostly just massive, wind-swept sand dunes, tidal salt marshes, and, well, heavy, relentless fog. It was literally just a rugged, wild edge of the continent. So the history of this city by the bay is really defined by a highly specific pattern: evolutionary history. When we think of ancient cities like Rome or London, we usually picture slow, gradual growth over millennia. But San Francisco? Totally different story. Its history is a rapid-fire cycle of constant evolution, development, and total renewal. It gets built up, completely wiped out, and then rebuilt at absolute hyperspeed. And that cycle, that is the central framework for our explainer today. We're going to look at exactly how this place transformed from a remote, isolated outpost into the sprawling, innovative megametropolis we see today. Section 1. The first inhabitants. Origins of the peninsula. Okay, let's dive into this. Long before the tech giants and the millions of tourists arrived, the origins of this land were incredibly serene and completely undisturbed. For literally thousands of years, this landscape was home to the Ohlone people, and they lived in this amazing harmony with the bay's natural bounty. They utilized the salt marshes, built these intricate Thule reed boats, and foraged right there among the dense redwood forests. They built a highly sustainable, thriving culture. That deep peace actually remained uninterrupted until the late 18th century. Then, in 1769, a Spanish land expedition arrived. Soon after, they established the Presidio, which was just a small military fortification, and Mission Dolores. For the Spanish, this was an incredibly harsh, cold, and isolated frontier. But those small, lonely dwellings, they were the humble, fragile seeds of a future empire. But here is a truly surprising historical fact for you. While European explorers were busy scouting the Atlantic centuries earlier, they had absolutely no idea this incredible, massive harbor even existed. Like, none. The San Francisco Bay was so heavily shrouded in dense weather that early explorers, sailing Manila galleons right up and down the coast, actually missed the entrance to the harbor completely. For decades, the narrow strait we now call the Golden Gate was kept perfectly hidden by nature's thick wall of fog. Kind of wild to think about, right?
Section 2. The Gold Rush Explosion. From quiet post to chaos.
For years, the settlement, which was called Yerba Buena back then, was just a sleepy little trading post on the edge of the water. But then, boom, everything changed in a flash. In 1848, gold was discovered in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. Instantly, a harbor that once saw maybe a few vessels a year was thrown into absolute unbridled frenzy. Imagine looking out at the bay and seeing a literal forest of abandoned shipmasts. The harbor became completely choked with hundreds of rotting boats. Why? Because the crews were literally deserting their ships the second they docked. They'd drop their cargo and just sprint off to the hills to find their fortune.
So the crucial point is the result was a population boom of truly historic proportions. This was the city's first great demographic swell. In just 2 short years, 2 years, a tiny muddy village of barely 800 people exploded into a chaotic, bustling, lawless tent city of 25,000. It was a place of overnight millionaires, crazy hyperinflation, where a simple egg could cost a literal fortune, and just sheer, raw ambition. And this wasn't just an American migration. It became a truly global melting pot almost overnight. You had dreamers sailing all the way across the Pacific from China, arrivals making the treacherous journey from Europe, and seekers traveling up from South America. They were all pouring in for a fresh start and a piece of that unimaginable wealth. It was actually during this explosive era that the settlement officially dropped the name Yerba Buena and was rebranded as San Francisco, cementing its brand new identity as the ultimate gateway to the West. Now, surviving that kind of explosive chaos required the city to build a deep, resilient foundation fast.
And, I think it's a really powerful parallel to our own lives. Just like this city had to lay down foundational strength to survive what was coming next, it's a great reminder for all of us about the importance of prioritizing our own personal mental well-being, especially when facing massive changes or external pressures. Taking care of that inner foundation is exactly what allows us to weather the storms and just keep pushing forward.
Section 3. Disaster and Rebirth. The Phoenix Rises.
Because as it turns out, the city's ultimate test was just around the corner. By the dawn of the 20th century, San Francisco had grown so magnificent it was globally known as the Paris of the West. Fueled by all that silver and gold wealth, it was a city of deep decadence and immense architectural pride. Picture it: opulent opera houses, sprawling grand hotels, and those revolutionary cable cars conquering the steep hills. They had truly built a world-class masterpiece right out of the sand dunes.
But then came the morning of April 18, 1906. On this stark date, the Earth literally tore itself apart. A massive, violent earthquake struck the coast. But the shaking, that was only the beginning. It ruptured the city's water mains, leaving firefighters completely helpless as a raging inferno swept through the wooden buildings for days. The authorities even had to dynamite entire city blocks just to create fire breaks. By the time the smoke finally cleared, the city was completely leveled. The Paris of the West was reduced to miles and miles of smoldering ashes.
But listen, this is exactly where the city's defining character was truly forged. The residents completely refused to stay in the ashes. Within just a few years, they didn't just sweep up the rubble and rebuild the city, they completely reinvented it. By 1915, which is less than a decade after total annihilation, they triumphantly hosted the Panama Pacific International Exposition, the World's Fair. It was this bold, spectacular showcase of neoclassical palaces meant to prove to the entire globe that their economic and architectural confidence was stronger than it ever had been.
Section 4. Bridges to Silicon Valley. Reaching new heights. Let's move to and see how this builds, because with the ashes cleared, the city literally reached for the clouds across 3 distinct, rapid phases of modern reinvention. First, you had the impossible structural engineering of the 1930s, defying the ocean itself. Then, following World War II, the city transformed once again in the 1960s into a global epicenter for counterculture and the summer of love, fundamentally questioning the status quo. And finally, that unique culture of nonconformity and thinking differently, it became the exact launchpad for the digital revolution, trading flower power for microchips and code. Looking specifically at that first monumental step in the 1930s, San Francisco pulled off staggering feats of engineering right in the middle of the Great Depression. The San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge and, of course, the Golden Gate Bridge. Battling treacherous ocean currents and blinding fog, workers built these towering structures. And these weren't just roads to help with commuter traffic, not at all. They were massive beacons of hope. They definitively connected this once isolated, completely inaccessible peninsula to the rest of the modern world.
Section 5. The Cycle of Evolution. A Ledger of Resilience.
So let's take a step back. From a small Spanish outpost completely hidden in the fog, to the wildly wealthy Paris of the West, to the current technological heart of the planet, the city's evolutionary arc is absolutely astonishing. It's completely unrecognizable from its humble beginnings. And this brilliantly illustrates what we can call the San Francisco formula. Because a city isn't just made of brick, steel, or silicon, right? This place has been knocked down, it has been burned to the ground, it has been severely shaken, yet it always finds a way to reinvent itself as something substantially greater than before. It is a metropolis forged out of pure, relentless resilience.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. History is an ongoing ledger of these incredible evolutionary cycles, isn't it? And it leaves us with a fascinating, provocative question. In a world facing unprecedented modern challenges, shifting economies, and rapid technological changes, what will San Francisco's next great reinvention look like? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Plus, let us know what city we should cover next in the comments below. Thanks for learning with us, and we'll see you next time.